Hello and welcome to the Jazz Drummers Blueprint Podcast, episode 7 this week. And I'm Andy.
And I'm Tim.
And today we're going to be here talking to you about some real life gig experiences. You know, what happens when things go wrong. Maybe things are different than what you expected or what you were originally hired for. I think both Tim and I have some interesting experiences with this kind of stuff over the past years. So
well, actually, we were just, so what brought this up is we were just talking a little bit right before we hit record, and Andy was telling me about this gig experience that he had this week that was kind of different than what he was hired for. And so, we were talking about it. I was like, Andy, this is our podcast. So let's hear about it. So Andy, tell us about this jazz gig that you got hired for this week.
Yeah, well, this is my, the most kind of recent experience, so it's right fresh in the mind. And to be honest, one of the podcast ideas was, in my mind, to talk about, what's expected of you for as a jazz drummer, what's expected of you on a gig, or how broad should your depth be as far as, different things that you're able to accommodate, because sometimes jazz gigs turn into not so much jazz gigs, which is kind of what happened to me. So I got hired by a jazz singer to do this gig, decent gig, outside stage, nice sound system. I know all this stuff going in, and I just assumed it was a regular jazz standards gig. We all know what we say about assumptions, right? Maybe. Right. But I got the song list, and there was only a couple of jazz tunes, or what I would consider, jazz standard type tunes on the list, which would mostly consisted of, there was a lot of 70s funk, soul, rock type stuff. Mm-hmm. Most of which I recognized the names of because they were, hits in the 70s. But honestly, I couldn't have told you, what the drums were on these songs, and some gospel like stuff as well. The great thing is, and the thing I felt really good about, was the singer's very good. And there was another singer on the gig who is really, really good. So I knew that no matter what, like, this was going to be a good gig. And I knew that the other musicians, even though I hadn't played with them before, I knew they were, high quality players. So even though it turned out to not be a jazz gig, I knew it was going to be a great gig because great players, great singers. Right. So like a couple of the songs, and we had a very short rehearsal with one of the singers. So we got to go over a couple of her tunes, one of which was kind of like a neo soul kind of thing. And I'm really glad we got to look at that one because I had no idea what the song was. So I learned it. We played it a lot like the record. There was a couple, some stops and things like that in the tune. So that was good. But there was some other songs that, I kind of knew, like Chaka Khan, Tell Me Something Good.
Right.
You know this?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, if you think you know it and you want to play drums to it, you got to listen to it, because it is all kinds of cool. I mean, it is like, I'm listening to this thing and I'm like, wow, that is some, like, you never would expect this stuff in a pop tune. So it's like 16th note hi-hat and the backbeat. So it's like a halftime thing, but the first backbeat is bass drum and the second backbeat is snare drum. So she did, boom, crack. And then there's a pre-chorus thing where they're doing this heavy breathing stuff. It's like, and it's 3 bars of 4 and then a bar of 5 leading into the chorus. So
it's crazy
like,
too.
And
is it John Robinson on
this.
that?
What's that?
Is it John Robinson? Is John Robinson the original drummer on that one, do you think? Is that...
No, because I think it was a band in the 70s called Rufus.
Rufus and Chaka Khan, okay.
That Chaka Khan sang with. So I think it was that band Rufus, and I don't know who the drummer would have been for that. Anyway, it's a super cool song, but hard, like not something that you could just sit down and play without like preparing it. So when we didn't get to rehearse that one, so I listened to it, and I was all ready for this 5/4 bar, and there's some other funky things in there. And we're on stage and we're going to do the song, and I asked the singer, it's like, okay, we're going to do it like the record, and he's like, no, we're going to do it really straight. And I was like,
Andre Fisher was the drummer. Yeah.
okay. So basically what I did was, instead of doing the bass drum, snare drum, backwards kind of sounding thing, I just made it like a halftime kind of groove, which worked out great. And then there was no bar of 5/4. And what was cool was the singer made that very, very obvious. There was no question that was like, this was the downbeat of the chorus. So it was great.
Wow.
Anyway, it all turned out good. There was a couple other songs that I like really listened to the record a bunch and was completely prepared to play it like the record. And we played it completely different than the record. So here was a case where like, you had to use your ears just to kind of, even at the count off was like, oh, they're counting this off way faster than the original groove. The tune, I think it's called Lifting Your Love is Lifting Me High. Okay, that's the most you're ever going to get me to sing. But that's how everybody knows it, right? And it's like a moderate tempo, and it's a 16th note hand-to-hand groove on the record. And I was all ready to play that, but they went into it super fast, and they didn't do the intro. So I was kind of like on the back foot already coming in, and it ended up being like a completely different groove. Worked out great, sounded great, but like for the first couple of measures, it was like, wow, what am I doing? So again,
did they have parts for you, or was it just all like you're just expected to know the tunes?
Yeah, we were expected to know the tunes, but I was maybe took it a little bit more like, oh, I need to learn the record, not just like, oh, I need to know the tune, so when they count it off, I can play. But it worked out great.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm curious, like what information did they give you like when they hired you? Were they like, hey, this is obviously this is a jazz gig, turned out not to be a jazz gig. Did they say like when you got the tune list, were they like learn these off the record, or did they have like forms or anything on it?
Nope.
Or is it just like these are the tunes you're playing?
These are the tunes we're going to play. Yeah, that was it. Like I said, we got a short rehearsal with the woman singer. We went over maybe.
When did you guys do the rehearsal? Was it be like the day of the gig or before the gig?
No, it was a week before. Yeah,
a week before. Okay.
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess the point is, you have to be really adaptable and not adverse to making changes on the fly, and you have to give. Especially, this was a singer-led gig, obviously. So 100%, you had to give the singers what they needed to hear on stage. And I think we did a pretty good job with it. We got some video and whatnot of it, and it sounded pretty good. And it was really cool that the sound system was great. And the other thing, too, was after I got the song list and after we did the short rehearsal, I made a complete rehearsal on the gear that I brought to the gig. So instead of bringing, what I bring 99% of the time, which was my, regular Gretsch Brooklyn 1812 14 kit. I brought my old 1983 Tama Superstar Birch kit.
I got it out.
Bass drum.
Dusted it off.
And it sounded really good. I mean, it really did. So it was, in that situation too, you have to think about, okay, there is a couple jazz tunes in the set, but we're going to be on a stage playing mostly funk and rock tunes. What needs to sound best? If you get up there with like a bebop bass drum, that's not going to make Chaka Khan sound like Chaka Khan's supposed to sound.
Well, I can say from experience, it's really mostly just about head choice and tuning. And you can do that if you want to like
right. For me, it was easier to grab the other drum than to mess around with tuning on the other drum.
Which is why I have a collection. I'm the same as you, man. Like if I'd rather not tune a drum. I'd rather like have drums ready for all occasion. And I think that's fantastic. That's exactly what I would have done too.
So that was my story for the weekend. Thankfully, it came out great. Everybody dug it. And the other musicians were absolutely phenomenal. Like these guys were, top-notch guys. I was very glad to meet them and, happy that I was able to
network
with them. Yeah. Good networking and everything.
So going back to one of our old, like, how did you network with them? Did you give them your card? Did you exchange numbers at the end of all this? Or
Well, the
what'd you
cool
do?
thing is since there was a bunch of emails, and also my wife did the phone video stuff, so I was able to send that out afterwards, in a Dropbox thing. We also have all of our contacts on the group text and emails that went out before the gig. So that was great. And so one thing I was going to say is, like, I guess the big question is, had I known what this gig was going to be beforehand, like at the initial thing, would I have taken the gig or been as excited about it?
Right.
And the answer is definitely yes. I mean, I think that it's still, even though almost everything that I enjoy doing now is like jazz stuff, I still like doing that stuff, especially when the musicians are good. I mean, when the players are good, and it's just fun. It's just fun.
Yeah.
And it was a really fun gig.
That's awesome, man. What a good experience, and what a crazy, like, topic in a way, because you like you said, you got hired for a jazz gig and then it turned into kind of a funk gig in a way, and that gets the question, like, that begs the question: what is jazz? Is jazz just swing, or is it kind of everything? Right? You kind of want, as a jazz player, you're typically going to be ready to do a lot of different styles. Like, I would always turn down a speed metal gig because I'm not good at that, right? But I would, for instance, anything like funk related, I'd probably say okay too. Like, it's not my favorite, but it's certainly not my forte, is what I should say. It's not my forte, but like, if they're in a pinch and they need somebody that'll do an okay job, then that's me, right? So similar thing, right? I probably would have said yes to a gig like that too, but it would have, yeah. That's really cool, man. I'm really glad you did that. I'm glad you had that experience. What were the jazz tunes that you did end up playing?
Just Squeeze Me.
Okay.
And Strange Choice and Splanky. This one, Count Basie.
Yeah.
That was really fun. Trying to think if there's any other, like, crossover jazz stuff. There was an original ballad that was like a jazz ballad,
Right.
sweepy brushes kind of thing, and an original that was like a bossa nova, but it was a little more rock-ish bossa nova.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's super cool. I like it. You mind if I change the subject on you a little bit?
But you're the boss.
Oh, I'm not the boss. I just found out, and we're going to change it since we kind of talked about gear a little bit. I legitimately, right before we were on this podcast, found out that there are new Zildjian cymbals out there. They're new Caropes.
Oh.
And the retail price on these is $1,000 for a 20-inch cymbal and $1,200 for a 22-inch cymbal.
Wow.
How does that make you feel?
Like, I'm glad I pretty much have what I need already.
Right? What an interesting thing.
I'm always in search of that. Like, I have kind of like my main ride cymbal I really love, but I'm always in search of like a second ride cymbal that I'm as in love with. Like right now, it's like my second ride cymbal is always, it changes depending on the gig.
Yeah. I think it maybe should. That's actually a really cool thing. So speaking of cymbals, then, like, we'll get back to the Caropes. What cymbal selection, did that change your cymbal selection also for this gig, or did you bring?
Of course. Yeah. So, speaking of Caropes, my main kind of ride cymbal, I think it's a great all-purpose ride cymbal, is a 22-inch Carope. It's a little older. It was on the lighter side of the ones that I tried out.
Yeah.
23, 40 grams or something like that. And it sounds just as at home in a kind of rockish setting. I mean, probably wouldn't be for a super loud rock setting, but for something, moderate volume, it sounds good. And it's I love it for most jazz gigs. So that was coming no matter what. But the other hi-hats, instead of using a super light vintage set, well, I say that I used a slightly heavier vintage set. I have some new beats from like the late 70s. It's like that
you just can't beat those.
Yeah, I mean, they're good for everything, right? So they went, and then I mean, on a jazz gig, I'm going to bring all ride cymbals for the most part.
Right.
Most of the stuff that I do, but instead I just brought a nice 18-inch. I have an 18-inch Zildjian cluster crash, they call it. It's kind of like they look like the K Suite, but they have these hammered clusters.
Yeah.
So it dries them out and makes it a little bit darker. And yeah, they're really nice. I have an 18 and a 20 of those, and yeah, they sound good. But they are, how like most of the time when we're looking for jazz cymbals, we're looking for something that has all kinds of character and sounds good at all different volumes, and you can hit it in every different place and it's going to sound different. I feel like with those crash cymbals, they do one thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You hit them and they go crash. It's like,
Crash cymbals generally do that. And, like they're really just made, the profile of the cymbals and everything are just made to be less of a ride, and certainly more function as a crash.
Yeah.
So
I did a good crash cymbal. So that was great. And it sounded fine.
That's really cool. So you have the value of your Carope probably just went up now since like the new Caropes. Man, so okay, like I'm going to talk about that Carope situation, like because like I just feel like that's insane. I only watched a little bit of their promo video on this so far. I'll watch the whole thing a little bit later, but it's like actually maybe we could react to it. Would you like to react to it? Like. I don't know if we know how to do that, but it's an interesting video so far that I've seen. All right, so these are the new Caropes, right? They look cool. You can see the bell profile is different than the old Caropes, right?
They definitely look like they are brighter finish. The older Caropes had a much darker, kind of almost pre-patinaed look to them.
Well, I remember the thing about the Caropes is that they had like their bell was really
flat, super flat. Yeah, mine is, and
yeah,
it's not a very pronounced bell sound on mine, which I don't mind. Although sometimes for Latin stuff, it's nice to have a
you want a little bit more bell. Yeah, let's hit play on this, see what it does. Ooh, fancy.
The legendary K has long been the holy grail of cymbals.
Sweet. Look at that wobble.
Yeah.
And then there was this quest for the old K, which people thought they had to go back to Turkey.
Was that Andy?
It with all that wobble, that means it's probably a lighter weight.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, it looks like it. So thin high, thin low, thin high, thin low. Look at these prices. $1,000. Almost $1,200 for these things.
That's crazy.
Woo-wee.
Turkey and buy a made in Turkey kind of cymbal.
I mean, it's pretty.
But that's why we have this relaunch, to make really those Ks available to everyone. Many people don't realize that K actually represents the name Carope Zildjian. Carope was my grandfather's great uncle. So it is with a great deal of gratitude and respect for my great uncle Carope that we pay tribute by calling this special series of cymbals the Carope line.
I mean, they're so good.
Sounds good.
When you talk about that old K sound, as my father said, it means something different to everybody.
I've always felt.
Anyway, so I don't get a little sense of what they sound like. They sound pretty good.
Yeah. I would say a little more. Well, I don't know. I'm only comparing it to my cymbal, right?
Right.
So my initial thought when the sound of the playing came in was it sounds a little bit more sparkly, a little bit brighter, which is not a bad thing at all. I think it sounds really good from the audio that's on that advertisement. What's the downside? The downside is it's twice the price.
Dude, like what is that? It's almost the price of an old K.
Yeah.
like that's the thing. Like, yeah, I bought old Ks for less than those. So like, what are they actually trying to do? They're trying to make it sound like an old K or be like an old K. People are just going to go buy old Ks because it's the same price. You can't price them as old Ks when they're not old Ks.
Well, there's something weird going on right now. You know, of course, we've had inflation and all this stuff. You know, don't get political about it, but you know, something's weird going on with the price of cymbals. On some of the drum forums that I, you know, kind of lightly follow, there was a thread on cymbals really recently. Actually, no, I think the thread was on, you know, hey, tariffs are coming. Who's buying stuff before the tariffs come? And you know, credit to these guys is that it didn't get political. It stayed, you know, very much like, you know, this is what I'm doing. This is what I'm not doing. And they did talk about cymbal pricing and how almost all of the major brands have increased their prices significantly over the last year. Yeah. You know, so this has been something that's been happening. Maybe it's just inflation catching up, but I think everything's become more expensive. And yeah, I mean, $1,200 for a ride cymbal, a new ride cymbal. Yeah,
dude, like,
I don't
seriously, I've never paid that much even for an old K.
Well, so okay, so that's the list price,
actually, no,
right? So what do you actually buy these things for at the store? That'll be the question when we start to see the prices roll in from the various.
There's no way that people are going to spend that money. Like, who's going to spend that money on a new K when you could just spend that money on an old K? Are they trying to inflate the prices of old Ks? Does that now say that like an old K is now going to be worth like $3,000 or something? You know, like
I wouldn't think they care one bit about the price.
Of course they don't care. That doesn't affect their company at all. But like, but I'm wondering what it's going to do.
Yeah,
that is a question. Now that new cymbal prices have caught up to almost vintage cymbal prices. You know, I mean, like you go in and see.
And I am, you know, pretty much a Zildjian guy, you know, by the way. So I do have some other stuff as well and that I really enjoy, but most of the stuff that I use is Zildjian's either relatively new or older. I don't have any, you know, old vintage rides like you do. Not that I wouldn't want one.
well, you know, like here's the thing. Oops.
Well, the other thing too is, you know, and I know you have talked about this a lot, is, you know, a lot of these new independent cymbal smiths.
Yeah.
You know, it's a thing now. You know, you can commission a cymbal now for probably considerably cheaper than, you know, what these new Ks are going for.
I'm not going to say any prices for anything because, you know, their prices are going to probably change here and there as well. I mean, this cymbal looks, it's a 15-inch crash. You know, like these prices have gone up a little bit, but okay. So here's a 22-inch K with 2,600 grams. Looks like a new stamp, but it could be let's see if we can see the stamp. It is a new stamp. So it's not very old. And this would probably be exactly what that Carope is supposed to be modeled after, but this one's a little bit heavier. And, you know, I feel like $2,600, $2,500 local pickup, that's probably just never going to happen. But here's a new stamp, 20-inch, great weight. You're looking pretty close. This one's in Canada, so you probably have to pay a tariff. But yeah, I don't know. You're getting to the spot where these cymbals are one and the same. This is ridiculous price right there. This is about right for a 22-inch intermediate stamp. Let's see what this sounds like. This is light. Oh my gosh. Okay. So this is probably.
Well, here's a good question for you, Tim. If
was it this one? If
you were a young drummer getting into playing jazz, maybe you're high school, maybe even college, or maybe even an older drummer who's just started playing jazz, what would you do? How would you start your search for the ride cymbal to use?
You know, that is a good question. It's The thing about it is, you're at that age. When you're new to everything, you're going to find a cymbal that you love, and you'll buy it, and it'll be great for you, and you'll love it for 5, maybe even 10 years, and then your ears are going to change, and then you're going to want a different ride cymbal. So the best way that you can do it is find the drummer that you like their sound the most, and that's probably either going to be Tony Williams or Brian Blade, and you're going to, or Eric Harland, and then you figure out what they use, and then do your best to find a proximity as some sort of version of that cymbal. Mine, of course, was Tony Williams, and I found a cymbal in New York. There was this cool company that came out in the 90s called Grandmaster, and they were a company that split right after, or they were part of the Istanbul split. So unfortunately, they didn't last very long, but it was a good cymbal company. And every once in a while they pop up, and they're kind of fun. I've had a couple since then. I no longer have that Grandmaster cymbal, but it was a cool cymbal. It was a Turk. It was 1,800 grams, and it was a 20-inch, and it sounded great. It was a really, really great sounding cymbal, and it served me well for a long time. And then all of a sudden, my ears were off of it, and I wanted something with a little bit more wash. And so I went to a Mel Lewis. And then, then I found this Sabian Artisan. Believe it or not, okay, a Sabian Artisan, right? What does a Sabian Artisan go for now? Let's find out. Since these are now super expensive. Let's see here. Let me share this.
That's right. You were a Sabian artist
I was a Sabian artist for a while. Okay, Artisan medium. That's not very expensive. That's a good deal. That's not a Sabian Artisan either. I don't know what that is. $864 now for a Sabian Artisan. Is this a 20-inch or a 22? 22. So you're looking at a near $1,000 cymbal now as well. I got my Sabian Artisan back in, I think it was 2005, and I got it for $350.
Nice.
Retail. That was before I had my endorsement with Sabian. And actually, that cymbal is the reason I got my endorsement with Sabian, or how I got it. I met up with the artist rep, Chris Stanke, and played him some stuff and told him what I did. And he's like, yeah, let's add you. And I was like, cool. And so it was a great relationship that I had with Sabian for a long time. And then I started collecting old Ks, and I felt guilty playing the Sabians or being a Sabian artist when I was really playing old Ks a lot. So I had to end the relationship with them. But yeah, it was really cool. And I actually, speaking of endorsements, I actually feel really free now just to be able to play whatever I want. I am still a Gretsch endorser, but that's, they don't really, I don't do anything. I buy my own stuff. Like it's not a flex. It just is. I happen to be able to, talk to them, and it doesn't, I don't know what it's doing for me, but or what I'm doing for them, other than like whenever I put out videos, I like to try and I always tag them, and I believe in the drums a lot, right? So maybe that's
you love the drums, and that's you love Gretsch Drums.
Yeah. I would be a Gretsch. I would play Gretsch Drums if I wasn't a Gretsch drum endorser, regardless. Like these are the drums that I would play. If I weren't playing Gretsch Drums, I'd be playing vintage Yamaha Maple Customs, because I just love it. Those are drums that I grew up on. Like all my teachers played Yamaha Maple Customs. My teachers were David Garibaldi, John Riley, Horace Arnold. Everybody had Maple Customs back then, and those were the kits. Like that was the kit. And the people that weren't my teachers that I looked up to, like Vinny Caliuta, Dave Weckl, all those guys played Yamaha Maple Customs. Like I am a hanging floor tom, 1990s, early 90s Tim. I can't help it. I just love that stuff. It was so great. Peter Erskine, another one that played Yamaha Maple Customs. So those were just, they were so influential on me back in the day that I have to give them a nod. But sound wise, the Gretsch Drums are my jam. I used Yamahas for a long time, and then I finally got my hands on the Gretsch drum set, and I was like, oh yeah, no, that's the sound. I realize it now. And it was weird because I never feel like that when I play drums. I've always felt like, no, this is the sound. And then as soon as I played the Gretsch Drums, I was like, oh yeah, this feels like jazz, or this felt like home for me. And they sound great for jazz, for rock, for everything. So yeah. But anyway, yeah, the cymbals, like, it's kind of ridiculous, that I think cymbal prices are getting so up there, especially when, like, if you wanted a completely custom cymbal, you could go to Manny at Screetus Family Cymbals. You could go to Timothy Roberts. You could go to Borba. You can go to all these independent guys that
even Paul Francis, right? I mean,
Paul Francis, exactly. Cymbal craftsman, former Zildjian, right? So, and you can check out my little interview podcast with him too. We could link that in the description.
Yeah, really good. Highly recommended. Check out that interview.
He was such a wealth of knowledge and such a cool guy. Like that was a really neat.
So let's stay on the cymbals for a minute here. So you suggested, finding, the sound from, one of your favorite drummers, the sound that you really like, maybe trying to find something like that. And I know, in this day and age with, if you're buying used, you're probably looking at, Reverb or something like that.
Dude, you know where the best place to, I don't know if I should gatekeep this, but I'm not going to. Guitar Center used.
Okay.
Honestly, is the place that you can go. You can find so many great cymbals at Guitar Center used. And then the best part is that it's one of the only places that you can buy a used cymbal and return it.
Yeah.
So if you don't like it, it's going to cost you $10-15 for shipping or whatever. But you buy this cymbal, you play it, and if it works for you, then you keep it. If it doesn't work for you, you return it. And a lot of times you can find decent deals on Guitar Center used. I have a student who is just addicted. Like you have to wake up early to beat him because he finds the deals. He legitimately just found a 22-inch nice Istanbul Jazz Series ride for $199.
Nice.
It sounds as good as the Karope. So he saved himself $1,000 by doing that. So like if you're just starting out and if you're looking to get that cymbal, my biggest recommendation is always buy used and just go to some drummers that in town. That's another great place to ask them if they have anything for sale. I have sold hundreds of cymbals over my lifetime, probably to students, maybe not that many, but certainly a lot of cymbals to my students as my ears have changed. And then of course, Guitar Center, I feel like that's the best place that you can go for buying a used cymbal because like I said, you can return it. So
yeah, that's nice. And there is, there's a lot of different, kind of places that you can look for used stuff. One of the tough things though, even if you have the potential to return it, which a lot of times you don't with a cymbal, right? Is being able to hear it before you buy it. Right. So that is one thing that, if you have access to, a real drum shop or a music store that actually has a bunch of cymbals in stock, you can go and play a bunch of cymbals. I mean, that's probably the best way to do it, right? It's obviously if you sit in a room and you play a cymbal. Now, the cymbal's going to sound different in different rooms, right? Like it's never going to sound the same
especially the cymbal room.
Yeah,
like all the other cymbals are going to activate. So if you can get it outside the cymbal room, you can get a better sense of it.
Yeah, but it's still going to sound different when you get it home. But you get a really good idea, and a much better idea than listening to a sound file that somebody's recorded and put on Reverb or whatever, which will give you somewhat of an idea, but it's going to be different.
I sort of disagree with that. So I like sound files. I don't know if you remember Spizzichino, but there was of course there's Roberto Spizzichino, who is the godfather of custom cymbals, right? His cymbals were absolutely insane. Back in the day, the only way you could get one was through his importer, who was Lee Ruff, and he did not like sound files. He would not give you a sound file, but he'd play you the cymbal over the phone.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And back then it just was terrible.
Yeah.
You just had no idea. You were just going to get what you got, and you would have to listen to his description. And back then you were paying $900 for a 22 on up, it was a little weird. I think, this day and age, honestly, with the ability to, let's say if you went to a custom cymbal manufacturer, if you went to Manny or Paul or Timothy Roberts or any of these guys, they're going to work with you. They're going to give you sound files. I like the sound files because guess what? That's what the sound of your cymbal actually is going to be on a recording, right? It's similar. It's going to be a little bit more what the audience hears or what the microphones hear at least. And what you hear is going to always be different. You're going to hear a lot more of the cymbal. There's always going to be a little bit more, but you're still getting representation of what the microphones hear. And again, when you think about like the cymbals that people are trying to get, like Tony Williams' cymbal sound or Brian Blade's cymbal sound, how many of you have ever played Brian Blade's cymbals? You don't know what they sound like to Brian Blade. You know what they sound like to the microphones. So the sound files are really a good representation of the sound that you want to achieve, I think. That's been my personal opinion. My other personal opinion is that I don't care. I think I can tell like what a cymbal is going to sound like by a couple of different factors, the weight and the shape. So you can give me the weight and the shape of a cymbal, and I can get a pretty decent idea of whether or not I'm going to like it. And then I'm going to hit it from there, and I'll figure it out. And, you know, I'm okay with it. I guess like I've had so many cymbals in my lifetime at this point that I just don't care as much as I used to. If that makes any sense. Like I legitimately know that I'm going to make any cymbal that I play sound good.
Sound like you.
Right. And it's so that's the thing about cymbals is that you are the thing that's the deciding factor of what's going to make it sound good or not. It's the sticks you're using, the way you hold your sticks, the way you touch the ride cymbal, the way you play it. You can hear actually when you watch that video, there's, I don't know, who was that? The first one that was the first drummer. Why can't I think of his name on that? You saw him just recently. Anyway, but yeah, I think I got into Billy Drummond, who has an impeccable touch. I don't know if he's playing the same cymbals as the other people, but like Ronnie, she was playing, she sounded great. Justin Faulkner, wasn't that Justin Faulkner at the beginning? You know, like that's, regardless, like the drummers are going to have the touch, right? The drummers are going to have the touch, the sticks, their touch, everything's going to make the difference in the cymbals. And then you'll go from there. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think that, especially if you get a new cymbal, especially a ride cymbal, right? We always talk about how important the ride cymbal is to jazz and, you know, keeping time and all this and your touch on the cymbal. I kind of feel like when you get a new cymbal, it takes a little while to learn how to play it, right? To learn the cymbal, learn where it sounds good, learn where it doesn't sound good, what it can do, what it can't do. And sometimes that can take a little while. So a cymbal that you might not be in love with for the first week might be the greatest thing you ever played after a couple months.
After you get used to playing it. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I feel you. Oh, no way. Oh, goodness. I gotta watch this video because like there's a lot of great players on this. One of my friends from college is on this, Paul Wells. Man, that's killing. Who is that?
But I guess the thing that brought this whole subject up was the asking.
Yeah, that was Justin Faulkner. That
was at the beginning.
I had to know. I was like, no, that's Justin Faulkner.
Oh man, that guy, he's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Right? That was cool. I don't know. I just pinned you, but yeah, no, that was Justin Faulkner. So yeah, he's incredible. Man, now I'm going to watch the rest of this video now that I know Paul's on this too. So Paul Wells, for those of you who don't know, Paul and I went to college together. Paul is an amazing drummer. He's on staff at Juilliard, and he's a complete cymbal nut. If you go on the Drum History podcast, he's the one that talks all about Tony Williams' sound and cymbals and all that stuff for like, 5 episodes. And it is the most in-depth stuff that you've ever heard on Tony Williams' sound and all of that. So another one that we need to pin on the bottom. So are we taking notes on this? What are the things that we need to pin? So,
but is he the guy who was the Neil Peart guy?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. That's some great stuff there. If you're interested in Neil Peart, check out Paul Wells.
Paul Wells. Yeah. No.
History podcast.
Really funny. When we were in college,
yeah.
The most amazing thing about that is that when we were in college, I always used to just mess with Paul a lot. Like we would hear people play and I'd be like, hey, Paul, I don't think Neil Peart would have ever played that. And, he was always talking about it. He's like, yes, he would. Neil Peart swings. And he like start talking and get off. He'd go into it. It was crazy. He was like that back in college. So Paul's an amazing drummer, amazing musician, and got an incredible ears. So yeah, definitely check that out. Anyway, yeah. Sorry, so many tangents here. I think this is fun because like we're just having a conversation and just talking about stuff and whatever. We kind of have topics. We're talking about drums. It's loose. Speaking of drums, we should thank our sponsor, the Jazz Drummers Blueprint. So our unpaid sponsorship here from the Jazz Drummers Blueprint. But, if you want to get into some of these conversations and learn jazz in a fun way with me and a group of musicians that are hand selected by me to be part of this, check out the Jazz Drummers Blueprint. There's also a link in the drum description down below. It's a mentorship course that'll help you achieve your goals and get to the place where you're playing the gigs and like not afraid to go up and play a funk gig when you get hired for a jazz gig and do things like that. But it's a really great welcoming place, and I look forward to seeing you there sometime. So yeah, check out the Jazz Drummers Blueprint. Should have done that earlier in the podcast, but we're having too much fun, Andy.
That's all right. Yeah. One other thing, and we did this in the very first episode, and I thought we would do it every episode, but we haven't because we've been talking too much, which is good, right? There's always something to talk about. And I'm going to put you on the spot.
Uh-oh.
And that is, give us some suggested listening for this episode.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, okay.
It can be a record, a song, or a particular performance, or it could even be just a drummer to check out.
Okay. I think, and this is because of my new that in the Jazz Drummers Blueprint, I'm doing a jazz history course right now. It's a short, like really just an overview of jazz and kind of the key players of some early jazz. So I really think that anyone and everyone that plays the drums should check out the very first jazz recording. And that was by the original Dixieland Jass Band, Jass. Mm-hmm. And the drummer is Tony Spargo. And the song is Livery Stable Blues. And that is the very first recording that was recorded in 1917 of jazz music. And so that is the very first instance of a jazz drummer. And so that's the very first instance of a drum set. So 1917 is the first recorded drum set drummer in the world. And I think everybody needs to hear that. What do you think, Andy? Was that what you were expecting?
That was not what I was expecting, but I think that's great. Yeah, I mean, I think that no matter how much interest you have in old jazz or, trad jazz, traditional jazz, I think we should all at least have some knowledge of where our instrument came from.
Yeah,
because
your ears should have heard it.
That old, right? I mean, the drum set. I mean, yes, snare drum's old. Drums are the oldest instrument on the planet, but the put together drum set that we use, for most of our jazz modern music that we would play, is only 100 years old, a little over 100 years old.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy, right? So, and in fact, what's funny is that like the thing about the drum set is it has evolved as hardware has evolved. Hardware is like the most important part of a drum set, like their early toms were these Chinese tack toms where they would stretch a piece of leather essentially or skin over a wooden pot looking thing, top and bottom, and that was your drum, right? So there were Chinese toms, there were Chinese cymbals, right? And no hi-hats, snare drums, tempo blocks, cowbells, slide whistles. Drummers were like, it was the trap set. And so like listening to that Livery Stable Blues, you can definitely hear that, man, the role of the drummer was a lot different back then than it is currently. The way that the drummer played, there was no timekeeping. There were no ride cymbals. There wasn't traditional jazz timekeeping. So it's a lot of improvisation in a way because they're improvising over what the music is calling for, improvising rhythms that helped establish the groove. So yeah, it's super cool. I think that would be a really great thing for everybody to check out and just get a sense of knowing where it started. And here we are on this electronic journey of jazz now, like going back from the very beginning to where we are today. what a journey. I mean, it's incredible that we can actually have that journey and we can see that progression and hear that progression from the very beginning to today. So yeah, check that out. I think it's a really great recording. So
Cool. That's a really, really good suggestion. And that is, now that it's over 100 years old, it's in the public domain. So we might even be able to play a little bit of it on here.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, for sure.
Great.
All right. Well, we can do that. Maybe we can sign off with the Livery Stable Blues. All right. Well, let's do it, Andy.
Excellent.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Thanks
All
for
right.
joining
Take care,
me.
everyone.
All right.